Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. We've got a really interesting conversation today and guest on with Alex Shevelenko. And Alex, you're the CEO of RELAYTO. And RELAYTO is a content experiences company, but you've got a really vast marketing background. You've been at companies like Salesforce and SAP and Microsoft and marketing and consulting and biz dev operations. And so you've got a really great background, but you had an itch. You call yourself a self-professed like a PowerPoint guru, power user, and you wanted to kind of go beyond the limitations of these kind of flat content delivery, PDF kind of delivery devices because you wanted to create better client experiences.
Very good.
Te-
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got here. And then we're going to kind of dive into the idea of these client experiences through content, enhancement of the content experience itself.
Yeah. Well, look, Steve, you know very well, if you're in a B2B business, you have content. This is sort of the lifeblood of your business, right? You have content for your end customers, you have content for future customers, you have to onboard your sales team, your partners, and so on. So you worked really hard on these content pieces, right? If you're a product marketer like I was, you kind of put your life into this deck that's going to solve all problems. And then the problem is you have this beautiful deck, but it's lacking effective distribution. It's not breaking through the noise. It's lost with 50 other decks. Whether again you're talking to customers or you're talking to your even internal sales team. And so the big idea was to say, well, what's the alternative to the deck, right? Like, well, the alternative is to build a beautiful website, microsite, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, there's a lot more constraints around that. There's more people involved. There is typically technical restrictions, maybe more skills that you need to bring to the table, such as coding. And so the big idea was like, what if we could take the majority of the people that know how to use tools, whether it's in Adobe Suite or in PowerPoint, know how to create, but don't know how to code custom websites. And they still have complex, important message to do. And what if we turn them into web creators? And that was the itch that I wanted to scratch for myself. Unfortunately, when we built out some of the prototypes of RELAYTO, I was not the only one. It turns out a lot of people want to express themselves and want to have impact after they've created this communication. They want to have people be wowed by their ideas, have an unfair advantage when they communicate their story, get the feedback, measure the digital body language versus just drop another PDF into the black box that is sort of the information overload and pray that somebody is going to read it and be delighted. Like we kind of remove that pain. And that was sort of my own mission to help more people that have important ideas succeed with their ideas.
Can you give us some examples of, you know, you talk about kind of a microsite kind of an experience, taking something that's flat like a PDF or a PowerPoint and really bringing it to life. Can you give us an example of what that looks like or what that feels like?
Yeah. Well, imagine like, let's take, your audience is marketers. So every marketer at the top of the funnel has some sort of an ebook or report that either lifts up the brand in a tremendous way or becomes a lead magnet type of destination that does drive some kind of conversion, hopefully. And you typically pay a lot of money to get people to either your website or to particular campaign. You might, you feed LinkedIn and Google and whoever, with that. And then, so what happens when they land into that? They download this PDF, right? And so, well, the first thing is when you download a PDF, most people go out of the web experience wherever they are, right? They may fill in a form, may not, depends on your setting, but they go somewhere else. And now they kind of lose track of your website or whatever was the landing area. And they have to go open it or wait for an email coming from you to open it. And then they're inside Adobe, for example, reader, right? And then that reader is actually the opposite of a website, right? It's basically a print um, first format, right? Like it's sort of like analog piece of paper, just happens to be kind of pseudo digital. Some links may work some of the time, but not always. And and you can't navigate through that like you can through a website, right? Like you can't click on a video and have an immersively video presented. So imagine the opposite, right? They don't have to leave anywhere. They're staying in either embedded inside your site or directly going to kind of a web link immediately. So they're kind of staying in the same context. And then they're landing in a beautiful cover page that has a video playing in the background that is like maybe a B-roll from that you've developed or something that just automatically AI generated through a platform. And so you feel like, oh wow, this is fresh, this is interesting. And then there's the next page has a navigation, and that navigation takes you directly to the right chapters, and it feels like it's meant for you to have a self-guided journey. And when you click into one of these pages, right? Like, this could be built same as your PDF. You land on a page, but you don't lose the navigation. You still have like you still feel like it's a journey. You could jump around, you know where you are now, you know that you're in kind of midway through it and you're in the chapter called X. And all of this is like using the best features of the web, persistent and so on. And then on that particular page, let's say you are drilling in into a case study. And instead of like a page of logos, that just everybody has. They all look great, but they lack credibility because you can't click on that logo and see what actually happened. Now you could hover over the logo or click on it and have an immersive pop-up or video or another document, another study that actually tells you the story. So what happens is you're actually having a conversation. You're basically speaking, "Hey, I wanna go into this area because this sounds interesting. Thanks for the intro. And maybe I wanna go linear here for a couple of steps, but then I wanna drill in into this case study because that's the one that's relevant to me." And you basically, as a creator, you're creating an environment where people feel control, but they're not overwhelmed. And that's the best, experience right now for modern consumer, is that they wanna feel in control, but they don't wanna think too hard, and they don't wanna switch context all the time, and they don't wanna be distracted, because if I click on that same YouTube video in a PDF link, I'm gonna be out, and then I'm watching some agitated political podcast, and I'll get all angry. I'll be thinking about your context as the source of that anger about what's happening in the world, the wars and whatever else is in there. And you just lost, this amazing opportunity that you worked hard for. You created the content, you paid to get people in there, and you just lost this opportunity to engage in a conversation. And people are just like little, goldfishes being distracted because they're leaving your context. So we keep you inside this immersive experience. And on the back end, you as a creator, see if it's working, right? See if people are engaging, where they're going, so you could constantly improve this experience. Does that make sense, Steve?
It
For you,
does. It does.
content
And
guru, and you know, you know, you know better, what some of the challenges are working with your clients. But to us, this was sort of pretty obvious thing, but very hard to execute. And somehow the world still operates was a default of a 20-year-old format like a PDF that was born factually before the World Wide Web as we know.
yeah, you know, here's when you and I met, here's the light bulb moment that I had because I'm a huge believer in the fact that companies themselves are the seller. And so all these documents, all this content that we create, when we create that, it comes from our own point of view, right? But when we can bring in the voice through a video or audio or some kind of an immersive experience of our customers, right?
Yeah.
I actually just got through doing a podcast with a brilliant three-time B2B CMO, and she said, "Steve, our customer's voice is ahead of ours, right? Is the voice of authenticity. They're part of the peer community. So they have validity, they have authenticity that we don't." And take, for example, like you mentioned, case studies there, right? How many of us have read a case study and know that has just been doctored to the nth degree to say exactly the point of view that that company wants? But if I could literally click on a testimonial and
Yeah.
hear that actual client say that and maybe a little context around it, the believability factor goes up exponentially, right? And then if I could share that automatically, which you enable with the
Yeah.
rest of my buying group, right? Because that particular, like you said, that experience took me right to that case study. And that was relevant for me, which means that's relevant for my company. And I can click and easily share that. All of a sudden, it's not an experience that's flat. It's an experience that brings to life all the point of views in all the multimedia ways that I want to be able to do, but I just default to, like what you said, the PDF, the PowerPoint, right? And so that's what was brilliant to me. The sharing capability, the multimedia capability, the capability to bring to life the voice of the customer or the point of view. I may want to hear, from the CEO of the company why they started it. You know,
Yeah.
like
It
what
humanizes
was
it.
unique.
Exactly. We've had, so I mentioned that we started was, obviously marketers who would create, the more beautiful content, but we've developed, sometimes marketers get, involved even in not just account-based marketing, but opportunity-based marketing. And so you
Right.
start creating, imagine you're doing a very, very big proposal, and your marketing team supports it because it's sort of, one of your pillar proposals for the business. And you could record on the proposal, the stories of the delivery team or the CTO telling, a
Mhm.
story like why the solution is perfect for somebody, right? And you can't always bring all those people into the into the client meetings. But then we've had one client, we didn't think of it. They like literally created their whole team and they had like 40 photos of people, and underneath each one there was a immersive video button telling them why they want to be supporting this particular client. Guess what? They won the deal. Hand because it was like you just brought in 40 people who connected their, how they're gonna be an extended part of this, enterprise solution. And so what, that was the one page in a PowerPoint, but actually was like 50 videos, like, created quickly. Some of them were, on your phone type of thing. Some of them were, maybe you had more facility to do it, but it didn't matter. Well, like, the authenticity was that it was professional from a landing perspective, and then the after that, it's up to the people, it needed to be authentic. So that's the voice of the team. Same thing we
Right.
talked about, the voice of the customer and the real study. If you're selling products, people say, "Oh, is easy to use. Trust me. My product is the best. Trust me." But what if you could actually have a tour of the product without having to log in and go meet, 50, you go through a bunch of onboarding things and you kind of see for yourself how that demo, either relevant to a particular use case or even like that customer, go through that right inside your deck if you're the person that's really interested in the ease of use, right? And so these are all voices of credibility, right? And voices of don't take our word for it. This is the real deal. See it for yourself, experience it for yourself, touch it, have emotions, and this is what I think the best people do in real life meetings, right? Like this is what the best teachers do.
Right.
This is what the best social movement leaders do. And I think this is what the best real professional salespeople do. They help people move towards a decision. And imagine now your deck can do that. Imagine your ebook can do that. Imagine your partner, employee, customer onboarding feels like a journey that they control, but it's still like is real. That to us is the big dream behind Relate to.
And this it's interesting. This isn't for just companies that you're building your trust, you're building your credibility. I mean, your work with one of your clients is Salesforce, right? Absolute leader in the industry. But you had a story about Salesforce and some of their innovation initiatives and things that they were doing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think, we are so proud and so fortunate to have had, organizations that need no introductions to have helped us develop our solution. So fortunately, with Salesforce, we were first invited as a promising partner. in their program called Salesforce Accelerate. And, we're a small startup back then and, didn't have a lot of validation. And we showed them what we're doing and they said, great, Relate to sounds fantastic. We want to deploy this to some of our smaller customers, but we Salesforce, this is just you're too tiny, you little chicken, you know, chicken stuff, let's just say, for us, right? Like you will never pass our security review, etc. But then there was some public material that was relevant to this program. They saw it in action. They said, oh, hold on a second. Our mission at Salesforce is to enable our partners like you, like Related, to succeed, to onboard quicker, to get, more partners live. And this solution will allow, people to do this quickly, with a small team. And so it started on the periphery, went through all the security reviews because there was pool. And we're very fortunate to power teams like App Exchange marketing team and, partner marketing team at Salesforce and sort of expanded that way. And I think fundamentally the reason Salesforce wanted to deploy something is that they care about their customers and they produce a lot of content. It's a obviously very comprehensive offering. And what they really want is for the customers, whether they're partners or App Exchange community members or their own employees that need to kind of figure out how to deliver the right solution to the customer, to feel like they can get answers quickly, get to the right resource, and execute. And we're very fortunate that they picked us. But they won a bunch of awards for that, kind of creating these experiences, well recognized. But I think more importantly, we learned a lot from them, right? We learned what it means to go through real security review. We really had to tighten up. So we've been very fortunate to have partners like that. Um, and Now it sort of started at the top, and now we see like smaller software companies that are part of, for example, Salesforce ecosystem. They go, "Oh, I see what you've done here, and I want to create for other people in the Salesforce ecosystem. I want to create also an engaging experience." And they could do it much quicker. They can do it in a day or two. And so there was just Dreamforce event, as you know, which just sort of takes over the city of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was just really fun to see many folks using Relay2, and communicating, connecting with each other. And I think this is a resource that stays beyond the event. It's like, imagine you're having your Dreamforce like human experiences, but they're now delivered in a digital way, across remote teams. So that's a privilege. And the more complex and sophisticated organization like Salesforce, right, the more you could imagine the content is the connecting glue for getting people to the right resources. So we're
Well,
happy
it also seems
privileged
to me
to work
that,
with them.
you know, as businesses, we want to be perceived as on the cutting edge. We want to be perceived as that, we're innovative. And if the way that we communicate and create that experience feels like it's cutting edge, feels like it's innovative, that has a halo effect on us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, think like the best term I picked up on this was actually in a business school. And then I was like, we were had this class which was known popularly at Stanford was touchy feely. And like talk about how do you come across to other people? And you kind of learn the importance of congruence. So if you say, I'm really excited to see you, Steve. I am just fired up, right?
Right.
Um, that isn't congruent, right? Because your body is saying one thing, your voice intonation is saying one thing, and but yet the words are not aligning with that. And if we think about that, what's the kind of I think embarrassing thing for a lot of organizations is this sort of digital incongruence. Like we are AI centric, mobile friendly, digital transformation experts. Download this paper first PDF that has no ability to be mobile friendly, has zero AI in it, is completely non-digital analog piece of paper, like this doesn't work, right? Like you kind
Right.
of go, oh my God, like you're full of shit. Like yes, it's the standard, but fundamentally you are not walking the talk. But it's very easy to say, well, don't like, let's go all start coding websites. Well, that's also not the answer, right? Some people do need to print out a formal contract or some sort of regulated industry documents. It's easy to create presentations. So that's sort of where you kind of need to find, a way to connect the reality of where we are today, which is very far from that universe, especially in the B2B world, so that people can be congruent, right? And if like I have an important idea, it deserves an important medium. Um, that kind of connects with the customer. Where I'm customer centric, my content needs to be customer centric. Let the customer choose where they want to go, right? And versus monologues. So that's sort of the rubric of this is customers want to interact, right? They don't nobody wants to hear a lecture. Nobody really wants to watch a 2-hour long movie unless you're like a professional movie maker, right? Like, so
Right.
what the really interesting thing is how do you use AI? How do you use digital tools to create an interactive experience for your customers that makes them experience emotions, move forward with certain ideas, potentially implement something and make it their own?
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting is because we all try to create engagement, right, with our content, right? And the next step and a click and and it's not always filling out a form. But what you've done like that example you gave of that 40-person team, one slide where you can click on it and like you can decide, right, where you want to go, what you want to see, but there's a next step and there's a next step. So that's the holy grail of marketing in terms of that we keep somebody engaged. And if there's an interactive experience where you get to pick where you get to go, right? Then the chances that you're going to keep somebody engaged is that much higher, right? And especially if you have multimedia formats in order to do that, and you have easy access to the voice of the customer, the voice of the team, that's going to be helping and supporting. So it
Yeah,
makes
I think
perfect sense.
what you picked up on is it was a sense of multimedia, right? Like it's part of it's customer centric. Like we all know that different people have different learning preferences,
Yes.
right? We all know this, right? Like we all know that also, depending on where I am in a journey, I may want the summary, I may want to go deep, and so this is fundamental, right? Like so for the people that love videos, you provide the video, right? Like for the people that love audio, you provide the audio. For the people that really are readers, you provide a structure. For the people that are, million feet view above, you provide like an executive summary that allows them to drill in, right? That's the way when I was in Microsoft, that's what we learned from Bill Gates, frankly. Like he would kind of go and a proposal and he would say, okay, let's drill into this area and let's drill in further and let's drill in further. And that way he would know if we did the homework and if there is the evidence behind this. And a lot of people do a lot of the homework. They publish these amazing reports, but they just don't provide the opportunity to build that trust by, letting people drill down easily and they just present this monolithic thing. So there's decision makers, there's, deep experts, and they all need slightly different journey.
Right.
And I think somehow we're just decided that everybody is the same. I mean, to force everybody in the same direction, or there's going to be some sort of magical playbook in CRM or that will allow us to coordinate it. But typically, because the journey of the funnel is not no longer like this, it's more like blah, 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 blah. You kind of need content format that allows people to feel like they can take a journey if they want, but they also are staying in the same place, but are accomplishing a lot of learning experiences.
Well, I mean, so I think you painted a really good picture in terms of why we should be thinking this way and gave some really great examples that really kind of bring it to life. And we could talk for a long time, but if there was one thought, one takeaway that you wanted people to have, for everything that we've said, but what's the most important thing that you think that marketers should take away from this, that CMOs that are listening in today?
But I think the confusion has been that the content is the message, right? Like that you are like, I'm going to generate with generative AI tons of content. It's going to be great. That's going to work. I think the movement is that experience is the message, right? And the content, obviously, you can't have a really crappy content in the great experience, right? But like it's no longer content itself is no longer a differentiator. So what is the differentiator is the experience. How do you make people feel? How do you build trust? through that content. And then the one of the currencies of that is interaction. Another currency is like the feedback loop that you get from that interactions and the data that you provide, right? So that's sort of the messages experience is the new message. And we better be as good at creating experiences with the content as we are maybe at events in a Dreamforce, right?
Right.
And that sort of is the next level, right? So that's why Salesforce is sometimes known as the Disneyland of B2B, and that's why we're very proud to work with people because I think we're learning from them of what does it mean to create an amazing content experience. And I think everybody needs to be on that journey. Every marketer is an experience business, is no longer in the content business.
No doubt about it. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. If people have follow-on conversation questions, want to get a hold of you, would a link to your LinkedIn profile, would that be the best way to get hold of you?
I think LinkedIn, and if you wanna roll up your sleeves and get your hands in Relate to, like, that's another way to just start playing and transforming your content, and then I always make time for users and customers, as well, because I think that is sort of, like, brings us together how we can help you and think about the world in a different way, but LinkedIn is great.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing all of this fascinating stuff. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve, and I appreciate how you're really pushing the focus on content and not just historically people have focused on kind of content inputs, like how do we create content, but you're focusing on outputs and more importantly, outcomes from that content experience. And I think that's sort of what makes us brothers from another mother. So keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you very much.